My name is Maher Nasser, Director of Outreach Division in the UN Department of Global Communications, and very happy to welcome you all to this town hall, civil society town hall that follows the Civil Society Conference in Nairobi in support of the Summit of the Future that we held on the 9th and 10th May. And for those of you who were with us in Nairobi, I think I don't need to tell you what a great event and a big success it was. For those of you who couldn't be with us, I think once you look and talk to people who have been, they will share with you the level of enthusiasm, success, and I think maybe watershed that was achieved in Nairobi. It was, in terms of participation, maybe just quickly, I think we have some slides that you can see. Not yet? Okay, that's not the slide. Okay, here we go. If it's too far for you to look at, but in total, 4,141 people registered from civil society, of whom 3,690 were approved for registration, and of those approved, 2,158 actually picked up the badges and showed up in Nairobi. And that included almost 71% from Africa, which is the highest percentage we've ever had in any of our conferences from the African continent. The registrants who picked up and were accepted came from 115 countries. The number of NGOs is 1,424. So you can see that it was, if you look at the map and where the colors are, it shows that it's a really very well represented conference globally in terms of the maybe addressing or always we have more NGOs from the north and less from the south, and this time it was the other way around. Maybe it sets the record straight because the majority of people in the world live in the global south. Next slide, and you can see also that in addition to the civil society representatives who registered and showed up, about 400 others registered and attended, and those included representatives of member states, representatives of the United Nations, senior leadership, as well as academia and the private sector. The DPI associated NGOs accounted for 11.3 of the participants, 39.1 were from ECOSOC, and for the first time we had almost half of participants from NGOs that had no association with the United Nations, which is something that we wanted to make sure that this isn't just a conference for those who already have a relationship with the UN. And I think that is probably a measure of the success of the conference when we talk about inclusivity. Age group, again, 41.6% were 18 to 34 years old. So we had a very young attendance, very young group of participants. We had 50 volunteers who were all from university students, and they were excellent in terms of helping people around, and we consider them as part of the conference itself. Gender, again, 58% women, 41% men, and 0.5% would that not specify, or chose not to specify. So you can see that in terms of the metrics and infographic, and very grateful to Catherine Good and team for preparing these because they give a nice visual. It's not as nice and visual as if you were in that room and looking at the people in the conference. I think maybe it's also time to thank again every single member of the planning committee, starting of course with the co-chairs and all the co-chairs. And if I could ask the co-chairs of the subcommittees who are present to stand up, please. I know that there are others who are online that we will make sure that they join us. We want to hear from them. Thank you all. This conference wouldn't have been a success without the participation and enthusiastic work and dedication of the planning committee, about 30 people who volunteered their time and did an amazing job in producing the programming, the workshops, the exhibits, and all that came with that. Of course, DGC colleagues in the civil society unit, I would like to thank them as well. They are here. Maybe they want to stand up and thank them. They're not all here. Some of them took well-deserved leave right after the conference and have yet to show up. But we will make sure to keep them busy when they are back to catch us up on all of that. Just numbers aside, the difference also, I remember in Salt Lake City, civil society conference participants and NGOs were excited that 2 ambassadors came all the way from New York to participate in the conference in Salt Lake City. And those were the permanent representatives of Slovakia and Spain. And of course, at the time, the President of General Assembly, Maria Fernanda Espinosa. In Nairobi, we had Maria Fernanda Espinosa, but in a different capacity. We had the 6 co-facilitators of the 3 documents to be adopted at the Summit of the Future come to Nairobi. We also had over 50 ambassadors or deputy ambassadors based in Nairobi register and come to the conference. And more than 130 or 40 diplomats from different levels come from either missions in Nairobi or from capitals. So in a way, you can see the conference was a qualitative also, qualitatively different in the engagement with member states. So that was really important to highlight. And in closing, the closing session, we had the Secretary General and the President of Kenya, and that was also an important reflection on the interest and also conviction that this conference was important. In the opening session, we had, of course, a video message from the Deputy Secretary General who really wanted to come, but then we settled for a video message. The President of General Assembly who also tried to come, but then again sent us a video message. And of course, other distinguished panelists. So the webcast should be available if you have not seen it. I think I haven't checked the quality. I am told it varied from the beginning to the end, but hopefully it's all at least there. And then on the website, I'm sure you have seen there is a letter of reflections from the co-chairs. I encourage you to really see it if you haven't. The press releases that were issued summarize the main sessions, but I think much of the actual excitement and really people come back with feedback is the human level of interaction that took place in the workshops and outside of the workshops when the 2,500 people for 2 days were in Nairobi. Of course, you may have seen that the week before there was a massive rain and flooding that unfortunately led to the death of a few hundred people, a couple of hundred people. So we made sure that also throughout the conference we expressed solidarity and condolences to the people and government of Kenya. And we at some point were actually concerned about how will the conference proceed if that storm continued, because including the UN office in Nairobi was partly affected by the flooding as well. But I think it was like a miracle. I think the week of the conference, it rained maybe once, very light. And we were very fortunate with the weather, and we were very fortunate also with the fact that no flights were canceled, no flights were delayed. So maybe there are individual cases that I'm not aware of, but we have tried to make sure also that all the speakers, all the ones who needed assistance and support were able to do it. We had opportunities at the conference, of course, to thank not only the ones who have participated in making it happen, but also the donors who have contributed, the European Union, Denmark, the Ford Foundation, UN Foundation from our side, as well as the Open Society Foundations and SDG Action Campaign and other contributors who donated directly to our collaborators and partners in the civil society. I think these are important and were important to recognize, because without them we couldn't have really have had the conference. Yesterday, actually, sitting here in this room, I was here for a little bit. There was the member state co-facilitator consultation with civil society on the second, or is it the second?
First, Rev 1.
The Rev 1 of the Pact for the Future. And seated here were the co-facilitators, but also, and I think this is also important, they invited Carol and Nodara to be with them, and they presented a review of the conference, the impact package, which I hope you have also seen. It's on the website. And now, without further ado, I hand over. I don't think I will need to introduce them again, because if you don't know who they are, you are in the wrong room. So, Carol.
Thank you, Maha, and hi again, Nodara. Hi, everybody.
Peace TV reporters have been active at the UN headquarters since 2010, the age of former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. They are often invited to gather pictures and news about high-level meetings and events at the UN headquarters. We usually report live on the scene the events of dozens of countries, including the US, France, the UK, Israel, Germany, Russia, Egypt, Kuwait, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Morocco, and the EU at the UN headquarters and their residences in New York. Our news reports have, in part, kept the international community up to date with the work of different governments so that people everywhere will know the great efforts and contributions of the UN to world peace, international affairs, and multilateralism.
Feedback, we've had some very good positive criticism, some not so positive, but we're taking that in stride so that as we move forward, we strengthen how civil society engages with UN processes, but also how civil society engages with the path for the future and the development agenda moving forward. So what we witnessed in Nairobi was a manifestation of solidarity in many ways. Solidarity across the thematic areas that civil society covers, solidarity across the generations that were represented there, solidarity across the broad diversity of civil society around the globe, and we know that it's actually a very, very small fraction that could be Nairobi. But we felt the solidarity, even with those who were not in Nairobi, through the online events and also through the engagement with the media assets that were developed by the Media and Multimedia Subcommittee. But as we put together the conference, we also brought a lot of that diversity to bear, and the 10 subcommittees that we had that took us forward powerfully to the outcomes that we're now celebrating were a true reflection of the diversity that colors civil society around the world. So as we went to discuss in Kenya, bring their voice to the table, even though they were not physically at the UN grounds. But the other thing that civil society also did, it coalesced around a common issue that affects civil society in Kenya, and that was the framework for regulation for civil society or non-governmental organizations, and put together a very strong lobby that we put to the government, and the president announced the operationalization of the Public Benefits Organizations Act, which for us is a powerful statement of the role of civil society. And so right now, a lot of organizations in Kenya are working around taking that forward. But the thing that remains to be recognized and celebrated is that we will forever remember that the PBO Act came alive at the UN Civil Society Conference 2024 in support of the Summit of the Future.
We looked out at a similar audience, a similar constituency, both online and in person. And we asked for your patience, forgiveness, and support as we embark on something quite different, on a very constrained timeline. We told you it would be a little bit chaotic. It would be a learning process. We told you we're trying something new. Are you willing to come along for the ride and support us? And all of you said, absolutely, and joined us in that journey to help make it what it was in Nairobi. So just thank you to all of you, and we just want to really appreciate you for coming along with us. This conference wouldn't have been possible without the openness and spirit of engagement that so many of you showed. It's been a busy year already, and even busier with this conference being added to the workload that many of you have taken on through your NGOs and your various organizations. So we really do appreciate you engaging in full force. With that said, a couple sort of, I think, pieces that we'd like to, in addition to what Carol has mentioned, outline as part of the outcome of this conference. So as we mentioned at the very beginning, at the very outset, we weren't going to negotiate text on what we thought civil society's opinion was on the Pact for the Future. We weren't just going to react to something, we were going to help shape it. That was the intention from the very beginning. So the outcome of this conference is not a negotiated text, it is an outcome package. It constitutes two parts. Part A is the co-chair's summary, which captures the summary of all of the plenary sessions, of the workshops that took place. It's worth noting specifically the CSO recommendations plenary, where civil society representatives reported back from the workshops, captured recommendations on each of the 5 chapters, as well as the Declaration on Future Generations and the Global Digital Compact, is 90% as it was on the day presented. We just did a bit of formatting, editing of the text, but you will see that also reflected in the co-chair summary. In each of the workshops that took place on day 1, where we received a report back of the outcome, there is a strong commitment that was produced from the workshop and a strong recommendation that was produced from a workshop as well. So you'll see 2 very clear bullet points under each of the workshop summaries. Maintain and center the value of the United Nations itself. And so you'll see an outline of principles, criteria, and a bit on the way forward. I think in terms of the way forward, which will be another piece that I want to bring to the table today, I'll actually read from what we've got written in the outcome document, because I think it's helpful to keep in mind how these impact coalitions will proceed. So the impact coalitions are self-organized and hence will determine their own next steps. The purpose of the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference was to provide a space for them to convene and grow. With this in mind, we understand the timeline of each impact coalition will vary based on the purpose for which it is convened. For some, the purpose may be to support particular perspectives or language in the Pact for the Future and its annexes. Naturally, these will come to an end upon the completion of the negotiations. For others, a specific reform may be mentioned in the Pact for the Future, Declaration on Future Generations, or Global Digital Compact, and need follow-through into forthcoming processes for further amplification and implementation. This may require a longer timeline. Either way, the purpose of the impact coalitions is to support the recognition and implementation of specific reform proposals related to the Summit of the Future, and they are encouraged to follow the timeline best suited to their proposal. They're action-oriented and very specific in those intentions. Another thing to mention on next steps as we move from May to September. The impact coalitions are, of course, one of many ways that civil society should engage in this process. The Summit of the Future is, whatever lands up in the intergovernmental negotiations, the Pact for the Future only works if all the different stakeholders buy into it and support its implementation. So a couple things that we heard from member states yesterday that I do want to convey to this group as well. It is very important.
8% global, 19% North America, 17% each from Africa and Europe, 9% Latin America, 7% Asia. This diverse representation reflects our commitment to inclusivity and amplifying various voices. The workshops addressed key commitments such as enhancing inclusive participation, leveraging technology for sustainable development, reforming multilateral governance, and strengthening civil society collaboration. Recommendations emphasize promoting women's leadership, climate action, youth engagement, and addressing challenges surrounding mental health. Workshops also focused on global governance reforms, combating corruption, and focusing on fostering partnerships to implement the SDGs, aiming to build a more inclusive, impactful, and innovative one with complex team. We received 68 applications for every. All of those applications were aimed to broaden awareness and amplify diverse voices and initiatives. This inclusivity is crucial in contributing to an inclusive path for the future. Some of the statistics from the application include 19% of the applications we received were from CSOs that were associated with EPC, and about 49% were NGOs in consultative settle. The activities were designed to utilize the Nairobi Conference to foster impactful action among member states, civil society organizations, academia, think tanks, foundations, and it supported the ambition and implementation of the developmental path for the future. Of the proposal of the topic, 7% were
to everyone who took part in the subcommittee. It was a very dynamic group. We had diverse members from around the world playing a central role in shaping the flow of the program over the 2 days, designing the sessions, identifying a very diverse range of speakers to cover a wide range of views and backgrounds from around the world. I want to also thank, as Nidara has already thanked, my fellow members of the committee, Brenda, Marianne, but also Sunyu, Francine, Paul, Sydney, Shamala, and Kerry Martin, among others who worked so hard to deliver a very ambitious program in a very short time frame. As you know, we played a key role in helping to set out the approach, which we were really glad that was taken on board by the co-chairs to have a 2-day program with 2 distinct parts. And as Darren has already highlighted, the first part really going into detail on the pact.
You mentioned that more than half of them were held in person in different parts of the world. That really explain the importance that this conference had for many people all over the world. 32% of these events were hosted online. But also, I just want to mention that they were not just global events. We have regional events, national events, local events, which actually means that these people were really congregating in different spaces using their different constituencies where they can consider to mobilize and talk around this process. Furthermore, these offsite events involve different groups, including people with disabilities, women, academics, scientists, indigenous people, older people, civil society, and children and youth. And I really want to mention this because these last 2 groups were represented in at least 50% of the events.
Major workshop sessions took place. First, on the success and barriers for meaningful youth engagement, from Makers of Youth Forum to Summit of the Future Social Summit of 1998, and the Impact Coalition sessions on youth and intergenerational engagement, collective action for youth, adolescents, and older generations, and towards the World Social Summit on Social Impact Coalition. We encourage interested organizations to express interest in being a part of IDA. We will hear more about this from my colleagues in New York. We thank the DGC and the entire planning committee for the huge success realized at the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference. Thank you.
But who worked assiduously behind the scenes to help tap into resources when we needed it most, together with our outstanding CSO colleagues constituting the host committee in Nairobi and the fundraising subcommittee in New York and globally. And thanks to the generosity of our donors, the global call to action and the SDG Kenya Forum, the Action for Sustainable Development, together with the major groups of the stakeholders and the Coalition for the UN We Need, supported the participation of some 77 CSO representatives from the Global South and across Africa, including the subcommittee co-chairs from across the globe. I would also like to thank the support of my fellow subcommittee co-chairs, Florence Deavo and Owen Robert Otu, as well as Father Brian Buzas of the Global NGO Executive Committee for his outstanding administrative support in New York, together with our stellar fundraisers based in both Nairobi and New York, who worked so hard to raise funds until the last possible moment to help support the many activities organized by the Nairobi Host Committee and the conference subcommittees at the conference. Now finally, behind the numbers to be found in conference budgets are the bonds of trust representing the intergenerational weave of years and decades of experience between and among the planning committee members, civil society networks, constituencies, the UN, governments, and donors, whose commitment to making the conference possible constitutes both the promise and hope of the Summit of the Future and its outcomes that is our privilege to further develop, sustain, demand, and achieve together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Johnson. I think one part that we didn't thank.
All of these requirements were addressed during the training workshops with the volunteers as well with the support of the host committee. Ensuring inclusive and equitable spaces in such a diverse and globally attended event is indeed a challenge. However, inclusion is a continuous process that requires us to start acting from the inside out. Accessibility was only become fully applicable when we raise awareness and promote best practices to make it happen in the most diverse scenarios. I am sure that all our colleagues at the UN in Nairobi and for the attendees, this was a valuable learning experience as well. Now we want to take these practices and recommendations forward to the Summit of the Future and beyond to ensure space and amplification of voices, especially for those coming from vulnerable groups around the world. And we would like to finish by expressing our gratitude to the dear co-chairs, Nadara, Carol, and Maher, the amazing colleagues in the planning team and our subcommittee members. Much gratitude to DGC colleagues, host committee, and UN team in Nairobi, the incredible youth reporters and volunteers who were key to making this meaningful conference a reality. And I see you all in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurata. Actually, we have our final speaker, but he's in the room. Troy Wolf from Outreach.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? On behalf of the Civil Society Outreach co-chairs, we give a special thank you to the Outreach Subcommittee members who have served over the past couple of months.
Members of the committee served on one of 3 subcommittees, each with a distinct purpose to pursue and promote the UN Civil Society Conference to civil society. We met weekly for updates and held breakout discussions over Zoom focused on 3 priority areas. 1, supporting the Nairobi-based conference planning committee with outreach and activations. 2, marketing the Global Action Mosaic as a tool to capture the actions of civil society in support of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. 3, to conduct outreach to celebrities and influencers across the globe in order to promote greater visibility of the UN Civil Society Conference and the need to engage civil society in the process. These efforts leverage the relationships of committee members, their organizations, their networks and resources, and utilize various social media platforms to announce the new commitment campaign and the Civil Society Conference. Collaboration with the Media and Social Media Subcommittee yielded positive results with the inclusion of the Global Action Mosaic in the Civil Society Trello. The United Nations Foundation was also instrumental in providing technical support, enabling the Outreach Subcommittee to send massive emails to civil society on behalf of the Outreach Subcommittee. We also experienced success with mapping projects to the Global Action Mosaic before, during, and after the conference, and mapped more than 150 SDG projects across the globe, capturing the contributions of civil society. Conference champions from 25 countries were invited to promote the conference, and we accepted 15, further assisting us with promoting the Civil Society Conference and the Summit of the Future. From the existing reports thus far, we estimate that more than 400,000 were engaged over the course of the past few months. Regarding lessons learned from the host country outreach subcommittee perspective, the conference allowed the host country to showcase its commitment to multilateralism and global cooperation. Hosting an event of this magnitude allows the host country to connect with a diverse range of stakeholders, including government officials, NGOs, activists, academics, and media representatives. This networking.
I am representing the Impact Coalition of faith-based organizations today. Nudara mentioned in her remarks that the impact groups were designed to be self-organized and that one of the purposes of the conference was to give the coalition space to convene and to grow. While we understand that there were many space considerations in Nairobi, which limited the number of impact coalitions that could actually actively participate during the CSC, we still couldn't help but feel a bit frustrated at the glossing over of faith-based organizations, and faith-based actors, which may have led to the subsequent omission of any mention of faith in the Pact for the Future, let alone of the positive impact faith-based organizations and religious and spiritual actors will play in implementing the Pact of the Future as major stakeholders. As we all face those same limitations, however, we are sure that other groups may also feel the same frustration. I would like to note that the Impact Coalition of Faith-Based Actors is active, increasing, and committed to working over the coming months. So my question is, what will be done going forward to broaden the scope of the Impact Coalitions and to make sure that all NGOs are able to organize work and provide input as we work towards the Summit of the Future and beyond?
Thank you, and I hope that question wasn't for me, because this is your initiatives and it's up to you to do what you need to do with them. I'll give the floor to you, please. And before you speak, I would like to maybe
We thank you for recognizing Health Impact Coalition as an official coalition, which we received an email yesterday. Just for 1 minute, I would like to make a plea that health is a key driver of the SDG agenda success, but it is not fully integrated into the Pact for the Future or the Global Digital Compact or a Declaration of Future Generations. So we urge all of us to work together to recognize that achieving health rights is required for the fulfillment of all other human rights, and to emphasize financially and environmentally sustainable and resilient health and nutrition as an intersectional issue, and to address gender equity in all its forms, including gender-responsive health care and protection of sexual and reproductive health rights. We have specific recommendations. With the paucity of time, I'm not sharing here. Yesterday, we had lost an opportunity due to the technical issues, but we will be sharing that with the co-chairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The last speaking role, and then
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. My name is Yulia Kazan, and I'm making this intervention on behalf of the Center for Family and Human Rights. We repeatedly heard the phrase and the importance, rather, of having young, diverse voices at the table. And in that light, I wanted to ask if you have any comments on the press release from the African Grassroots Organization saying that pro-life voice was virtually dismissed at the Nairobi conference. This group of young people from across the African region felt marginalized and subsequently drafted a declaration called the Nairobi Declaration on the Unheard Youth Voices. So we would like to know whether you believe that's false representation of what happened, and also if pro-life groups are welcome more broadly to join this Impact Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Two questions have come up on the Impact Coalitions. The Impact Coalitions are self-organizing, and so if you have an interest on an issue that is reflected in the Pact for the Future that you would like to coalesce around, and you meet the criteria that has been set, one, that it has at least 5 civil society organizations coming from different regions, with 3 of the regions being from the Global South, and at least
So Hawa Diallo and today, 31st of May, is actually her last working day with the United Nations. So Thank you, Hawa. Thank you, everyone.